Hi class, let's get started with some discussions of diseases within our cardiovascular system, or AKA our blood and circulatory systems. Now if we look at our cardiovascular system, there's going to be some structures that we're going to talk about in this chapter, then we're going to talk about some normal biota, and then the vast majority of this chapter is going to focus on diseases within the cardiovascular system. So first, let's talk about the main parts or the structures within our cardiovascular system. You can think of this as a mini review of the anatomy. Our cardiovascular system has blood vessels in it. Hey, there's tubes that carry blood. To pump the blood, we'll have a heart, and our cardiovascular system is a closed circuit. And when I say closed circuit, I mean that generally speaking, fluids stay in our cardiovascular system. Now, if we go into a more in-depth discussion about this topic, so we'll talk about fluid leaking out of the cardiovascular system to form extracellular fluid. But generally speaking, what's in the cardiovascular system stays in our cardiovascular system. The functions of our cardiovascular system are to circulate nutrients and other blood gases. Our cardiovascular system really is paired with our lymphatic system. So we have the cardiovascular aspect with the blood vessels, we have the lymphatic aspect with the lymphatic vessels, and we can combine them together to form the circulatory system with its two separate branches, one cardiovascular, one lymphatic, and they complement each other. If we look at the heart, the primary pump of our circulatory system, it's going to be about the size of a fist. It's located within the mediastinum cavity of our thoracic cavity, and it's approximately centered-ish in our thoracic cavity, slightly to the left. It's about the size of our fist. If we look at the heart, there's the double pump with chambers on top and chambers on bottom. The two chambers on top are called atria. The two chambers on bottom are called the ventricles. Let's look at the picture of the heart. This will make it easy to understand. So we have our two chambers on top, the atria, two chambers on the bottom, the ventricles. We have the interatrial septum, the interventricular septum. We have the right AV node valve, the left AV valve. We'll have the pulmonary semilunar valve, and then we'll have the aortic semilunar valve. The aortic semilunar valve is going to send blood out to the aorta. The pulmonary semilunar valve is going to send blood out to the pulmonary artery, or pulmonary trunk, and then the corresponding pulmonary arteries. The heart also has some layers to it. The superficial layer of the heart, let's go ahead and erase this right here, is the epicardium. The epicardium is part of the serous membrane around the heart. And then the thick meaty layer is the myocardium. And then the inner layer is the endocardium. Our epicardium is tough and fibrous. The myocardium is muscular. And then the endocardium is very smooth and has very, very low coefficients of friction. Within the blood vessels themselves, arteries always flow away from the heart. And this is, generally speaking, carry oxygenated blood away from the heart. The obvious exception is within the pulmonary circuit, but we're going to focus on a systemic circuit point of view. So in the systemic circuit, the arteries carry oxygenated blood away from the heart. Veins carry deoxygenated blood towards the heart. Arteries are going to have high pressure blood and are, of course, going to have that thicker tunica media. Veins are low pressure and don't have a thick tunica media to them, but they do have one-way valves. And then capillaries are the tiniest, smallest blood vessels. They are going to be where we have gas exchange and nutrient exchange. The innermost layer of all blood vessels is going to be identical to the endocardium. It's going to be called the tuna intima, sometimes also referred to as the endothelium. This is very smooth, very slippery, and is going to encourage the flow of blood, just like the endocardium of the heart. The middle layer of the blood vessels is going to be our muscular layer. And then the outer layer of our blood vessels is going to be of our tough, fibrous connective tissues. We also have our lymphatic system. This is a complementary circulatory system. This circulatory system complements the cardiovascular system. It's closely related to the cardiovascular system, but distinctly separate from it. It is going to be a low-pressured system that helps to remove extracellular fluid and carry that extracellular fluid back to the cardiovascular system, where the excess extracellular fluid can be processed by the kidneys and then urinated out. It's also going to be a major source of our immune functions. We are going to filter the extracellular fluid with the lymphatic system, and we are going to help expose our lymphocytes to potential antigens that have been caught by antigen-presenting cells. If we look at our lymphatic system, we're going to have lymphatic vessels that are roughly parallel to the blood vessels. These lymphatic vessels are going to start small and grow larger and larger and larger. We have clusters of lymphatic vessels primarily around blood capillary beds, because that's where a lot of fluid leaks out of the cardiovascular system. We also have lymph nodes. You can think of a lymph node as a filtering system for the lymphatic system. Multiple lymphatic vessels converge at the same point, and then the lymphatic fluid within the lymphatic vessels will be filtered. Lymph nodes are going to be clustered in the groin, neck, armpit, and intestinal areas. And then finally, the spleen is another major organ of the lymphatic system. We are going to have white blood cell production, and our spleen is also going to serve as a reservoir for erythrocytes, or red blood cells. If we look at our cardiovascular system and our lymphatic system, generally speaking, it's going to be sterile. There's going to be a very low amount of microbial activity. There are a lot of defenses within our cardiovascular system. One of the reasons why we need lots of defenses within our cardiovascular system is because if a microbe can get into that cardiovascular system, it'll be able to invade the rest of the body quite readily, quite easily. You can think of the cardiovascular system as the interstate highway network of our body. And once something gets into there, it's going to have quick and easy access to any other point of our body. So if we have an infection of the cardiovascular system, every other system of our body has the potential to become infected. If we have an infection make it into the cardiovascular system, because that infection is going to spread everywhere in our body, we consider it a systemic infection. Some of the multiple defenses we have in our cardiovascular system to help protect us against those systemic infections include a high concentration of leukocytes. And remember or recall, a leukocyte is the same thing as a white blood cell. One of the specific kinds of leukocytes that we have are going to be lymphocytes. Another kind is a phagocyte. Lymphocytes are going to be involved with that third line of defense, or acquired or specific immunity in our bodies, whereas the phagocytes are going to be the interlink between the non-specific defense, our second line of defense, and the acquired immunity or specific immunity, our third line of defense. Generally speaking, phagocytites will, at random or without a lot of specific distinction, phagocytize any pathogens that make it into the body, and then those phagocytites will present the antigens from those pathogens to the lymphocytes to activate the specific immune system. That's a gross abbreviation or summary of the immune system. Now, as we look at our cardiovascular and lymphatic systems, those two main branches of our circulatory system, anything that we see that involves the blood is going to have the suffix anemia. So virulemia is going to be the presence of viruses in the blood. We've been using this term multiple times throughout the course. We've talked about viremia multiple times. That just means the viruses are in the bloodstream. Fungemia is fungi in the blood. Bacteremia is bacteria in the blood. Septicemia, generally speaking, is going to be referred to as bacteria growing and flourishing in the blood. Occasionally, we'll have fungemia and I circled the wrong spots here. Here we go. Occasionally, we'll have viremia and fungemia causing microbial growth in the bloodstream, but generally, if that's occurring, it's not referred to as septicemia or sepsis. Bacteria growing in the blood has a special categorization of septicemia or sepsis. Septic shock is a condition that occurs when the immune response starts to grow out of control. There's a cascading immune response, and this cascading immune response causes the blood pressure to drop drastically across our cardiovascular system. So septicemia will lead to septic shock, and bacteremia is what leads to septicemia. So class, concept check here. True or false? Healthy humans usually have sterile blood. A for true, B for false. Go ahead and rewind the video to get me an answer, or check your notes and or book to get me an answer. Pause the video right now and get that answer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The correct answer is true. We, generally speaking, have sterile blood. Because of the high concentration of white blood cells in our bloodstream, we generally don't have a lot of pathogens in our blood. The normal biota of our cardiovascular system is going to consist of not many pathogens. In our healthy state, we don't have any microorganisms colonizing our bloodstream or our lymphatic system. However, there have been some recent reports from the Human Microbiome Project, the HMP, which has suggested that our bloodstream isn't completely sterile, even if we feel quite healthy. But further studies are needed to validate this. These low-level infections could potentially contribute to diseases which we don't have any etiology, or for conditions which we previously have thought were non-infectious. This is fairly new information and is going to require a few years to run some follow-up studies. So if we look at our cardiovascular and lymphatic systems, we have lots of white blood cells within our cardiovascular system. We're also going to have some protein cascades in our cardiovascular system. And then within our lymphatic system, we have a very high concentration of white blood cells. And there is no normal biota within our cardiovascular and lymphatic system. So, concept check class. The cardiovascular and lymphatic systems are closed systems and are always completely sterile. The correct answer is true. Looks like I have essentially the same concept check question repeated here for this presentation. So I'll go ahead and change that up for you after the fact. If you have any questions about this material, please feel free to post them in the discussion board. Let's check here. Yeah, these are almost identical concept check questions. My bad. Sorry about that, class. If you have any questions about the material, please feel free to post them in the discussion board or shoot me an email. Happy studies.